Howdy ho, YouTube! Back for another pop culture update. This is another 5 items. It is a post full of video games, not entirely full, but mostly full of video games, and also full of failed video games. I don't often throw in the towel on games, or not be able to beat games, but these ones gave me some trouble, and frustration gave way to not, well, there may have been some rage quit sessions, but overall when I decided to put the games away, it wasn't a full-on rage quit. It was just like, well, I've done what I can, you know. I owned it. I came to terms with it. It is what it is. Maybe years down the road I'll revisit them, probably not, but you never know. But let's get right into it. And we're not going to start with a video game. We're going to start with the only non-video game item this time around. It is a book. It's actually the first entry of them all, I think, if I understand correctly, of the Marvel Heroines series they're doing, along with all the other ones like Tales of Asgard, blah, blah, blah. And it is called Domino Strays. Domino is a superhero. And the leader of, I think, what are they called? Are they called the Posse or something like that? Remember when I was talking about that Outlaw book a few sessions ago? She was part of this group that is led by Domino. Outlaw is the one I was talking about. So Domino is the leader of this little female gang, and her superpower is luck. You may remember her from the second Deadpool movie. That's Domino. In this book, she is approached for a job by a woman who wants to get her children back. Her son and her daughter have both been taken in by a cult. And as soon as she hears cult, fanatics, this sort of thing, Domino's like, nope, nuh-uh, not happening. And we'll get into why later. So eventually, though, she relents and she decides to, with talking to some of her teammates, she eventually decides to take this job on. The guy who's leading the cult is located in Chicago, and he's a well-known public figure. I can't remember exactly, like, I think he's a businessman or something like that. I can't remember, but he's always had a dark side to him, and he's trending more that way. And now he's basically leading a cult in Chicago full of all these people that are holed up in, I think, an old church or something like that. They're ruled over very closely and not nicely. Nicely enough that he retains the followers, but fearfully enough that he continues to retain the followers, if you know what I mean. So Domino eventually leads a mission to free these two kids from this cult, and in the process meets a young boy who has tremendous superpowers, and actually kind of defeats Domino in a way, and she gets captured. And during this time of her captivity, she comes kind of, or no, sorry, this one bounces back and forth on time frame. So sorry, she doesn't get captured in that. As she's, see, it's been so long since I read these. As she's completing this mission, she talks about her past and how she met this young boy, and she got taken captive, and finally her mother, she met her mother, who was the leader of this Project Armageddon, which was a failed super soldier program, which is what gave Domino her powers and ultimately led her life down the road it went down. So she's very resentful towards her mother, and all that happened. She hasn't had a happy life. So as she's completing this mission that relates so closely to her own life, because of the fanaticism element to it, she has to come to terms with her past and kind of put some stuff behind her, deal with it, that sort of thing. And in the end, do they pull the mission off? Of course they do. Domino's got the power of luck on her side, right? How can she not? Next up, we get into the video games. NHL 14 for the PS3. This was the last hockey video game of the NHL franchise we had for the PS3. We did a season with the Leafs, won the cup, all that sort of thing. Um, NHL 14 was very similar to the 13 and 12 that came before it, but there were some um, added features to the game. The Be a Pro mode, I think, had a deeper aspect to it where off ice activities and interactions would contribute to your growth as a player. They had you could play in the Winter Classic games. Um, there's some other ones I forget, but my favorite was they had a 20-year anniversary shout out to NHL 94, which was back on Sega Genesis, and you could basically play NHL 94 style with the updated graphics and rosters, but the basic Sega Genesis controls, and that was a really cool ad because NHL hockey is the best hockey franchise, obviously, but even the modern day games, as good as they are, nothing compares to those first few games on the Sega Genesis. Those initial games that just took me and my friends' lives by storm, but the world by storm, the hockey world, and just so classic, so much fun, so perfect. So you have that option to play updated 94 style, and they also reworked a lot of the stuff. They reworked how the fighting works. The whole skating thing from NHL 13 or 12, I forget where that began, where you really can't turn your guy because he's in the middle of a speed burst, and you can't just turn on a dime, and I didn't really agree with that kind of skating engine. So they reworked it a bit in this game, and it was a little better. So just some stuff like that. And the coolest thing about it is that Martin Brodeur is the guy on the cover, the goalies, the Devils goalie for a long time, probably the best goalie to ever live. And it was a contest, I guess, to see a fan voting contest to see who got the cover, and it was down it was like a whole bunch of players. I think each team got to put in 2 players for the cover, and then it was like a bracket challenge, and eventually came down to Brodeur and, at the time, Columbus Blue Jackets goalie, was it Sergei Bobrovsky? Something like that, I can't remember. I think that's who it was, and Brodeur won in the end. So that was kind of a cool little tidbit for that game. But NHL hockey, you can't go wrong. Any year, they're going to be a little different. They're going to vary here and there. They're going to have added features, new features, stuff like that. But no matter what, it's still the best hockey franchise out there. You can't go wrong by buying an NHL hockey game from EA Sports. It's a fact. Next up, a PS4 game called Assetto Corsa. This is a racing simulation game that really, I guess it was released back in like 2011 or 2013, something like that, on the PC. It started on the PC. There was no console versions, and then years down the road, they eventually released them on consoles. I think the PS4 one didn't come until 2019 or something like that. So it's a really heavy simulator game. You can adjust all sorts of settings on your car, and it starts off like you're able to in the campaign mode, you're able to play in this first kind of circuit where you have to achieve a certain amount of success in, I think there's maybe in each circuit there's maybe 4 or 5 events you can partake in. I think 5 usually, and you need to achieve high enough finishes overall. You can finish third in one race, first in another, second in another, as long as it totals up to enough finishing points or whatever to graduate you from that circuit and unlock the next one. So it starts off really basic with really slow basic cars, and of course as you go through it, it ramps up. You get to use new cars. You don't have to purchase anything. There's no or is there? No, I don't think there was. I think you just got to race the cars that you got to race. And it was a really fun game to start with, but then as I got further into the game and the races started getting harder, I just found that I couldn't win. Like I couldn't get high enough places on the races to advance. And no matter what I tried, no matter how many settings I adjusted, no matter what kind of race strategy I chose to go with, I just could not compete with these guys. And so after a while, it just got old, and I was like, you know what? Great looking game, controls pretty well. I really enjoyed the theme of it, the look of it. It's just, it was too hard. And looking at the scores this game got, the scores for the PC version, the OG PC version, are astoundingly, in the most cases, higher than the PS4 version. The PS4 gets anywhere from like, I think I saw some 4 out of 10s up to maybe 6 or 7 out of 10. The PC version was usually at an 8 or a 9. So the PS4 version was a lot lower, and sometimes like poor marks. So I'm wondering if other people had the same problem. Maybe they didn't port it correctly, and maybe adjust some of the difficulty and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm thinking some other people had some issues with it as well, which, like I said, is too bad, because the game it's a lot of fun. It looks great, it controls great. I really enjoyed what time I spent on it up until I ran into the trouble. So like I said, that's one I could maybe pick up later on down the road when I got nothing to play, and just see if I can maybe patiently pick away at it and move on. But I also don't want to do that and then end up rage quitting a million times again. So we'll see. Time will tell. Next up, this is another racing game, and I downloaded it for the Nintendo Switch a while back, because I've always been interested in this series. It's always looked, I've always been curious about it. It's looked interesting to me. And the game in question is called Gear Club Unlimited 2. In this game, you kind of, it's kind of like a career story mode, campaign mode sort of thing, where you are this driver. And actually, I don't think you start as a driver. You either start as a really low driver, like so low, or you start as like a mechanic or something. You're not even a driver, and you eventually get thrust into the spotlight of this racing team that's trying to win a championship, and because of circumstances, you're kind of the only option they have, so you have to drive for them. And as you meet people, like your mechanic, and there's like text bubbles, and you're talking to people, you're a mechanic, you're whatever, and it ends up being the owner of the race team is your father, and the relationship is strained between the two of you. So it's kind of an interesting take on just going through a bunch of missions or campaign circuits or whatever, right? There's actually like a story behind it, which is kind of curious. And to be a strained relationship like that is such a weird direction, but kind of cool, right? So yeah, you start out with basic car. I think you get a Mini Cooper for your first race, and you have to do your best, get some success, and work your way up, and hopefully win for this team that is owned by your father, and not only win the championship, but win his approval, right? So as you win, you gain money, you buy new and better cars, you can compete in different events then, and the game is based on this map, and you can pick and choose events at random as they spawn. Some of them are one-off events, and there's different kind of events. Like there's just a regular straight-up race with a bunch of other cars. There's a rival race where it's just you against one other person. There's elimination races where after a certain amount of time, the countdown timer goes off. Person in last place is eliminated, so on and so forth, until only one racer is left, and that's who wins. So that sort of thing. And then you get into the circuits, where there's a series of races in a row where you get points for each race, and then the grand total point winner at the end is the ultimate champion of the circuit. And those are the ones that really count towards your progress in career mode. And yeah, so you just move your way up, and you can also spend your money not only on cars, but you can spend money on all of the different kind of areas of your garage. Like you've got like an aerodynamics lab, a tire shop, of course the garage where you work on your engine. What else is there? An off-road shop, that sort of thing. So you can spend money on all these upgrades to your car, but you can also upgrade your shop each segment of your garage shop so that you can get better upgrades available to spend your money on within that shop. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this game. Um, I really enjoyed it, other than the controls. I lost interest in it eventually because the races got harder, and it's not that they were too hard to win, it's that the cars, for being kind of like, this didn't seem like an arcadey kind of game to me. Um, it seemed like more of a simulation with this cool story behind it, and I don't even think they knew which way they wanted to go with it, because the racing has this element of arcadeness to it, like a Cruisin' USA where you can crash and rebound and whatever, but not fully like that, and not fully like a simulator where it's your car behaves the way it should, right? It's this in between where your car seems like it's controlling like a sim, like a car would, and then all of a sudden it goes crazy like arcade style during a certain turn or something like that, and it was just really hard to predict and focus on maintaining control through a race, because you just didn't know sometimes what it was going to do, and you thought you had a corner nailed or a sequence nailed, and the car goes berserk on you, right? So for a long time it was fine. I was good enough to continue winning despite that. But once you got a certain distance into the game and things started to get harder, that aspect kind of sunk the game for me. I couldn't, kind of like Assetto Corsa, I just couldn't advance anymore, and it just became not fun. So couldn't put this one on the shelf because it's a digital download, but on the virtual shelf it went. Last up, another virtual digital download for the Nintendo Switch I made, and I've reviewed a couple games, the first two games of this series, a while back, and this series is one of my, it was never a series to me, it was one standalone game for the NES way back in the day, but they've since, all these years later, made a series out of it, and they continue to be as amazing as the original. And the game in question is Blaster Master Zero 3. In Blaster Master Zero 3, Jason and Eve and Fred have made it to the planet Sophia, but in the Sophia, the little vehicle that Jason drives and uses to destroy mutants and everything, but they get attacked by Sophia's native population or whoever it is, and the three of them get captured and they get split up. And the Sophia is kind of in a bad way as well. So eventually, though, the facility where they're holding Jason, at least, gets attacked, and he's able to escape in the fracas that ensues. So during the process, he's able to find the Sophia, gets it up and running again. So obviously, he wants to recover both Eve and Fred, and sort out this mutant menace once and for all. So that's what you're setting out to do in this game. There's some different things in this game. When you pop out of the Sophia and you're on your 2 feet in a heartbeat mode, Jason now comes equipped with a jetpack on his back. You can't fly up with it. What it does is it lessens your descent, so you can jump downwards or across further and higher than you would normally, because usually he just makes a little jump like this and he lands and he's like boom boom dead, right? So the jetpack allows you to utilize your jumping a lot more effectively. Oops, my slipper. And get to different areas that the old Jason never would have been able to. So that's different. Also, he comes equipped with this mask now that can flip between different dimensions, sort of thing. So every once in a while, whether he's on foot or whether you're in the Sophia, you'll come to an area that's all like, it looks like computer glitchy, right? And that's signaling that's the start of another dimension. So then he flips his helmet to the other mode, and now he moves on into this area that was before not accessible, but now that he's changed the dimension, the reality, he can now proceed and move through that area. So it's really confusing. And another thing you can do is any save point of a certain type, you can then warp between at any given time between all the different planets you've been to and stuff. So there's a lot of bouncing back and forth to different planets and different areas of each planet. Um, and on top of that, you've got all these different dimensional pockets everywhere. So this game is a classic revisit. Go back here now that you can do this, and that sort of thing. So I found I got really far into it, really far, which is a shame that I had to put it away because you could sniff the end, right? But it just got so convoluted, and I would pull up the map and I would see like the areas I hadn't really been to yet, and I would go there and I'm like, oh, I can't get there because of this, I can't get there because of that, and I could not find where that next step I had to take was, where on the map I had to go and what I had to do to access that next area, and make the snowball effect of, okay, now I can proceed through the game, right? Like I got hung up on this one hiccup where I didn't know where to go, and it sunk the game for me. I just couldn't figure it out. And trying to read a walkthrough of this game and trying to piece together where you are amongst that walkthrough is virtually impossible unless you're to just sit down and read the whole thing from start to finish, and then try and figure it out that way. So it was just like, you know what? I gotta hang it up. I gotta hang it up. But again, like with Assetto Corsa, and maybe with Gear Club, maybe one day I'll come back to it. More so with Blaster Master more than the racing games. I think I'd be more likely to revisit that one because it's action games are a little easier to revisit and try again than racing games. Plus, it's Blaster Master. The original Blaster Master game for the Nintendo Entertainment System is like arguably my favorite standalone video game of all time. It's so much fun. I had so much fun with that game as a kid. I owned it. I don't know why I bought it, because the cover's really weird, but I bought it. I played it for the first time, and I was hooked ever since. So that's another big incentive of why I would eventually revisit it, is because I just love that game series. So, but anyway, that is all the 5 items for now, 3 of which were abject and complete failures. Well, Blaster Master I did all right, but hopefully the next round you might see me maybe succeed a little. Story of my life.